Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Taylor Combaluzier, a mining analyst at Redgold Securities. Today's webinar features Vizsla Copper, which is exploring for copper deposits in British Columbia. The company's flagship is the Woodjam Project in the Quesnel Terrane. Its three other projects include the Poplar, Copperview, and Redgold properties. The company is a spin-out of Vizsla Silver and is backed by Inventa Capital. Today I have with me on the webinar Craig Perry, who's the Chairman and Chief Executive Officer at Vizsla Copper. The format of today's webinar will be comprised of two parts. In the first part, Craig will provide an update on Vizsla Copper and what you have to look forward to during the second half of this year. In the second part, we'll take your questions live, so please send in your questions using the chat and we'll get to as many as we can. You can type your questions in at any point throughout the presentation. To start, we'll handle the disclosures and then get into it. So for Vizsla Copper, there may be some forward-looking statements made on this call. I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the corporate presentation located on the company's website. For Redgold Securities Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only and should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Please see our most recent research located on our website for Vizsla-specific disclosures. So with that out of the way, I'll turn it over to Craig to update you on the company and what you have to look forward to.
Thanks very much, Taylor. Yeah, worth emphasising the forward-looking statement side of things. You know, I tend to get a bit arm-wavy and talk about strategy and vision and the likes, and that's what we'll do here. So, important introduction there. Thank you for that, mate, and thank you for all attending. We've got some, big things to talk about here, of course. I'll kick off with a little bit about the copper price and then go into some detail on all of our projects and very much happy to take all your questions. We can probably get through this fairly quickly. It's a very, very simple story in a sense, in that we have a lot of copper in the ground. We've got some outstanding exploration targets, one of which we're drilling as we speak. And I'll get to that, and there's some important news there. And then, really just talking about what's going on in the copper space and what we think is happening and how things might play out will be one of the first things we cover. Look, we put that slide in there. Could copper reach $20 per pound? I think absolutely it will. I wouldn't be surprised if we see $30 per pound copper. And there's recent precedent for that. People look at you a bit funny and think you're a bit mad if you say that copper's going to $20 or $30 per pound. But that recent precedent, of course, when I joined Rio Tinto as a junior geologist in 1999, the copper price was hovering around 70 cents. Over the next 7 or 8 years, the copper price rose nearly 6 times, all the way to $4.60, an all-time high, $4.60, I think they're around sort of 2009, 10. Before coming back and stabilising sort of high $2 mark, $2.50 to $3 range, before, of course, taking off about 18 months ago. And then we had big news on Monday. Trump, in an off-the-cuff comment, suggested that the US was going to apply a 50% tariff on imported copper into the country. And, that has massive ramifications globally, but the interesting thing that statement did, even though it was very much off the cuff, was create a further arbitrage between international and the US market, seeing the copper price spike 20% in the day, all the way up to an all-time high of $5.60. It's now hovering around a stabilised all-time high. I see it's $5.54 today, and so you can see a dramatic jump in the copper price of, probably not a massive thing in the market because, of course, the US isn't by any means the world's biggest demand driver of copper. But what it effectively did do is show that LME stockpiles for trade have been at all-time lows. And so when you throw something like that into the mix, you can see an extraordinary outcome. We saw that copper price jump 20% in a day, and now hovering around its weekly all-time high. So it's an extraordinary outcome and a very good. It's a bit of a sort of canary in the coal mine situation, if you like, canary in the copper mine. it demonstrates that there is very high torque in the copper price when demand increases and supply decreases. And of course, you've seen some side challenges with the likes of Ivanhoe and their Kamoa mine going offline due to some problems that they've had there. So, it's a tight and tricky market just at the moment. And I think, last time round, the demand driver was a large, of course, but largely localised effect of the urbanisation of a big chunk of the Chinese populace. This time round, it's a global effect. It's the electrification of the planet, the replication of grids, and then that real swing demand driver that's come in lately and that appears to be growing unabated, and that is data centre demand for copper globally. So it's an exciting time, and copper is, of course, the biggest, deepest market in the mining space, and I think it's my favourite market. Of course, I've sort of had some success in uranium, silver, gold, some other metals, cobalt, and coal. But this is my favourite place to invest because it's such a deep pool and can deliver extraordinary returns. And I think, last time round, if you look at some of those names like Ross Beattie's Lumina Copper, my mentor and business partner Owen Hegarty's Oxiana, he took from, in 2000, it was a $5 million company. By 2007, when I joined Owen at Oxiana, it was a $7 billion company. So, delivering 10,000% returns to shareholders. So the copper market can be an extraordinary place to invest at the right time, and I think the right time is now. But we've got a tremendous team behind us here. Mike Conant and I, we've been business partners for 6 or 7 years. Mike's the co-founder of Vizsla Silver, and on the board here of Vizsla Copper. Mike and I work very closely together. We're doing some extraordinary things there with Vizsla Silver. Look out for some news over the coming months there as we work to bring our feasibility study out, and we're in mine development there at Vizsla Silver. Simon Smirlex joined as a partner of Inventor Capital and a founding director of Vizsla Copper. He's also COO of Vizsla Silver. And this is an important point. Simon is probably the most prolific mine builder alive today. He was the chief operating officer of Ausenco Engineering, and Ausenco is the biggest independent mine EPCM contractor, mine building company in the world. Simon led a team of over 3,000 people, built 47 mines there, and with a previous hat on. 13 of those mines are world-class. Simon's built a lot of world-class copper mines. So we have a tremendous capability to not only advance exploration on projects, but also advance projects into production. And it gives us an opportunity. So many companies want to sell their projects when they get to just past that discovery stage. We're in a great position to step in here and acquire them when we see fit, and advance those projects through development and on into production. Steve Blower, Steve and I have worked together for just over 10 years now. Steve's something of a legendary explorer, particularly in the uranium space. Co-founder with me of ISO Energy. He worked for us at NextGen. NextGen, of course, I was a co-founder there and on the board until a couple of years ago. Steve worked for us at NextGen. He discovered the Hurricane deposit for us at ISO Energy, and also made the discovery of the Griffin part of the Wheeler River ore body that Denison owns. He's also worked extensively in copper, and I think he's about to make a major copper discovery in the coming weeks. You can see some of the other names. I was a co-founder of NextGen and ISO Energy, of course, and led ISO Energy through that discovery phase. Vizsla Silver, very important company. We will be building we are building at the moment. We're about 200 metres underground on the decline, building the third biggest silver mine in the world. But we have a vision to take Vizsla Silver to a stage where it will be the biggest silver company on the planet. I worked at Rio Tinto, Simon at Ausenco, and then importantly, I've been a director of Skeena. I was the chairman of Skeena through the transformation, acquisition of both Snip and Eskay Creek. And now we're into development there at the Eskay Creek mine, and that's going to be a world-beating new large gold mine in British Columbia. And that's important because that that project and the stage it's at has given us good visibility to what you need to do in terms of government relations and First Nation relations and stakeholder relations generally when you want to advance a project from exploration on into development. So we've got the team to do that. In summary, our strategy, we're focused on places where we can explore cheaply and give investors our best bang for buck. British Columbia does that. Canada does that. The US to a lesser extent, but certainly Mexico is a good place to explore. But at the moment, we're very much focused on these wonderful untapped resources here in British Columbia. And BC, I can tell you, I've had several meetings with the new mines minister and his team, and BC is very much open for business. Not in any small part helped by Trump and his tariffs causing some of our, less commercially minded politicians to put their thinking caps on as to how we invigorate the Canadian economy. So I think there's a perverse effect that's coming out of Trump's actions, and that is to see, much more focused approach to encouraging large-scale mine development. And certainly the new mines minister here in British Columbia, I'm based in Vancouver myself, the new minister is very much focused on getting as many of these projects up in the shortest of possible timeframes. And that is playing out. And we see that at Skeena as an example or as a proxy. We have very strong engagement at every level from the government and their team to get that project fully permitted and into full development. Timing very good. We don't have long. I think, I've been saying it for a couple of years. We've been fortunate that the copper market's been in such bad state that we've been able, not demand actually, the price has been performing very well, but the equity available for projects in the junior copper space in an exploration has been abysmal. Fortunately, we've had success and we can back our companies ourselves with large checks that we haven't had suffered as much as many others have. But our timing's been good and we've been able to put our foot on some really large resources, huge amounts of exploration upside for not much money at all. But I think we're coming to the end of that phase where cheap projects are available. It won't be long before you see everything in the market increase multiple times. We're leveraging our skill set. We've got a tremendous team. We've got great partners and we've got great investment partners as well. So we're in really good shape on that front. So, we've got everything in place to turn Vizsla Copper into, the next serious copper developer and producer over the coming years. Our projects, we're in a tremendous location. If you look there, British Columbia, our Copperview project, really just up the road, a few hours from Vancouver, just south of Merritt, highly endowed mineral belt there. You've got Copper Mountain, very large scale mine, and a number of other discoveries, including Kodiak's Gate Zone and Man projects. So that's a fantastic location to discover something and build a project. Woodjam, again, in a great location. Redgold and Woodjam, really the two combined projects, just outside of Williams Lake, about 40 kilometres east of Williams Lake, on paved roads with grid power across the property. And that project sits just south of the Mount Polly mine. So it's a fantastic location to develop projects. The First Nations group there is the Williams Lake Band, and they're very commercial. They've dealt with Mount Polly and worked on Mount Polly for the past 20 or 30 years. They know what they're doing and they're supportive of well-run mining, exploration and mining projects. So we're in good shape on that front. And then lastly, Poplar, and I'll go into a little bit of detail on Poplar, but that sits just south off the main highway that leads from the southern part of British Columbia up towards Alaska, 40 kilometres south of the town of Houston, on a main road, albeit a gravel road that goes down to the Huckleberry mine, another imperial mine. So that's an excellent location for a project. And as I say, we're in British Columbia, which nowadays is a very good jurisdiction. So at the moment, our market capitalisation sort of about $35 million Canadian. We've got just shy of $4.5 million in the bank at the moment. We're well funded. We did a financing a couple of months ago. My partners and I supported that heavily. I should say, I'm the pig in this bacon and egg sandwich, not the chicken, in that I'm fully committed. I've put $3 million of my own money into the company so far, and will continue to write checks and support it because I love what I see. And the investment thesis goes like this. We have projects in really world-class porphyry terranes, outstanding projects with large resource bases that have already been drilled out. We bought them for a total of $14 million. Over the last couple of years, very, very cheaply. We've now got nearly 4 billion pounds of copper in the ground across 2 projects and just shy of 2 million ounces of gold. We also have a lot of silver and we have a lot of molybdenum that we don't include on these resource statements at the moment. That will change as we bring those into the fold because we're seeing value in those metals in these resources as well. And, if you had one knock on what we have, it is the grade that you see there, and the average grade of the Woodjam Project you can see is 0.4% copper equivalent. Down here at Poplar, the average grade is 0.41% copper equivalent. Now, the good thing about these projects is that resources are close to surface, easily accessible in great locations where you have grid power and paved roads. So we're in a really good shape on that. But what I would draw your attention to is that in this Woodjam resource, there's a zone called Deerhorn, which is at the moment 33 million tonnes at nearly 0.7% copper. And indeed, we've seen some very high-grade results from some of these drill holes. So we know there are higher grade deposits in there. And for the last couple of years, we've focused on understanding those controls on the high-grade mineralisation. And then exploring those further, drilling those out further. And we've had some really good results over the last couple of drill campaigns, the last couple of years. A little bit, fell on deaf ears. We put out sort of, 110 metres at 1.2% copper ahead of the Beaver Creek Conference last year. And I think our share price, the market sold us off on the back of those outstanding results. So it's been a tough market. We've changed strategies here recently. I suppose you've got to be dynamic and flexible. And what we saw was that AMARC, a number of discoveries were getting very well rated. AMARC, of course, hit some serious mineralisation late last year, early this year. Their share price went up 5 times. And interestingly enough, and I think this tells you that the market is starting to develop a sense of FOMO, and I think we've turned the corner. And I'll come back to that because I was just at Rick Rule's conference last week down in Boca Raton, and I can tell you that it's the most bullish conference I've been to in the past 12 years. People are really looking for opportunities. I presented the story at the conference on Wednesday, I think it was, and the share price by the end of my presentation was up 2 cents. People were actually starting to buy at the table as they listened to presentations. So something's changed. I think it's a very exciting time. Now's a good time to get set. So we've got a large resource base and, very importantly, some outstanding exploration targets, and that's what we're focused on this summer and the drilling that we're doing. It's a bit more of a summary of the projects there. It's a little bit of a boring slide, but we, in essence, have 4 projects: Woodjam, Redgold, Poplar and Copperview, and that gives us a huge area of very prospective ground in British Columbia to explore. I make that point about AMARC and that discoveries still matter. I think that this is, a lot of explorers would go up 10, 20. If you go back 18 months ago and you'd have drilled some of the holes that AMARC's drilled, they might have gone from 20 cents to 30 cents. This time around, they went from 20 cents to 70 cents very quickly. So the market's starting to reward discovery again, which is very heartening. And it gives us a bit of an indication as to what we should do with our shareholders' funds. And that is drill, 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 as my mate Sean Rusen would say. And we are drilling as we speak. We've got the Thira target up there at Poplar, that image on the top left there. I'll come into that with some more detail. We've got Copperview, which is an incredible target just north of Kodiak's Gate Zone, 5 kilometres to the north of Kodiak's Gate Zone. I think Thira and Poplar South, Poplar Thira, that is going to be a discovery. I'm confident about that. And that's one reason to own the stock at the moment. Copperview, we probably won't be drilling that to September, but that's again one of the better targets that I've ever seen. Megaton on Woodjam, we actually made a discovery 2 years ago. We're yet to go back to drill it. We've done a bunch of geophysics and a bunch more work to understand that target. We realised that we've drilled off to the side, well off to the side of a porphyry system, but we got some really interesting copper-rich results there that suggest we're off to the edge of a major porphyry system that could result in another serious discovery. And then we've got this very strong conductive anomaly called Great Plains at Woodjam. So we've got 4 outstanding targets. And if I were a betting man, well, I am, because I bet my own money on this company every time we do a financing. I put $700,000 in the last financing to test these targets. I think that Thira will absolutely be a porphyry system, and Copperview probably likely the same, and that both could be quite high grade. Onto the Poplar project, and really this is where we're drilling at the moment. We commenced drilling 2 weeks ago. I'm excited about this one. I think we're on the verge of making a discovery and confirming what we thought, that this Thira, or what we used to call our Poplar South target, will be a discovery. So look out for news in coming weeks as we get the first assays back. I think we're waiting on. We rushed the sampling and assaying of the first hole because we like the look of what we saw. Look out for news on this in the coming weeks. This project, it was discovered, it was actually where we started Vizsla Resources, which we broke into 2 companies, Vizsla Silver and Vizsla Copper, about 3 or 4 years ago. And we started Vizsla Silver with some projects in this ground. The Stars deposit had just been discovered by a company, another company, a competitor. We liked what we saw. The opportunity to acquire Poplar became available to us about 2.5 years ago. We ended up paying the princely sum of $2.7 million in stock for Universal Copper. We gave Universal Copper shareholders 83 million shares as part of that transaction. When people ask me, why has your share price come off so heavily over the last couple of years, it's the fact that we issued stock to both the Woodjam shareholders and the Poplar shareholders, and they'd been long-suffering shareholders. You know, some Woodjam not so much, but I think the Poplar guys had been in there and hadn't done terribly well. So they treated any good news that we had and the good work of increasing our volume in shares traded as an opportunity to offload their stock. So that put an artificial cap on, well, in fact, worse than that, the selling reduced the share price significantly. So that was a pretty painful experience. We're through the other side of that now. And indeed, we've started to see our share price rise strongly as we move into this drilling campaign. It's a fantastic location, as I say, 40 kilometres south of the town of Houston, off the major highway there. The orange and grey lines running through the south of the property, that's the haul road to Imperial's Huckleberry mine, which is currently on care and maintenance, and that includes grid power along that road as well. So it's an outstanding location. The Poplar deposit itself, and you know, I put this up here at the moment. Again, you can sort of see the roads running across the property. You can see that it's been heavily logged. It's undulating, pretty benign terrain, very benign terrain, and there are a hell of a lot of exploration targets that haven't been tested in any way, shape or form since the Poplar deposit itself was founded back in the mid-1970s by Utah Copper, and that was discovered in outcrop. Our Thira target is where this Copper Pond area is, and I'm going to go into a little bit of detail there because we're excited about that. So when we finally acquired the project in May last year, we acquired and did some magnetics over the top of the property. What we found was the Poplar deposit itself lit up pretty well, but you'll note here that these small black dots are the drilling that's been done across the property. And you can see there's, outside of the Poplar deposit itself, really just a smattering of drilling, and most of that is shallow RAB drilling, 100 to 200 feet RAB drilling, or I should do that in metres, shouldn't I? But 30 to 60 or 70 metre deep rab holes, they don't tell you much in this kind of terrain. You need to be able to look at the rocks in a bit more detail and work out alteration and the like. And so I think that drilling would have missed everything that's out here. But the Poplar deposit itself, that was discovered in outcrop, as I say, in the mid-70s by Utah Copper. They walked on, they discovered that it was outcropping, they sat their rigs up and they drilled the heck out of that, proving up that large 350 million tonne at 0.4% copper resource base. But no, not much exploration work was done outside of that. When we got out there, we went and checked out this anomaly here, which intrigued us because it's a large east-south trending anomaly with about a 10-kilometre scale to it, 4 kilometres north to south. But it's got a very prominent mag low in the middle of it that gives it the look of a donut-type shape. Those are always interesting in porphyry copper exploration. You'll note there's another one to the north that looks a bit interesting. That probably more a relic of geology and a window through some basalt, whereas this one looks more country rock hosted. So we got our skates on as soon as we made the acquisition. We got down there a few weeks later to see what we had. And we developed this Thira target. Sorry, I should go back because one of the things that we did know is there's a heck of a lot of copper staining in rocks and shallow pits around the southern part of this Thira target and the western edge of the Thira target. When we walked across here, what we noticed was that there was very strong propylitic alteration throughout the area, zoning into some phyllic alteration towards this mag donut. So everything you wanted to see to advance this as a porphyry copper exploration target. We then completed a soil grid across the property, and that really lit up something that was very exciting to us. Right at the middle of the mag donut, you have very elevated copper, diminishing as you move outside that zone, and then very strong zinc anomaly around it. So you're starting to see classic porphyry copper geochemical zonation, which got us even more interested. And certainly, as I mentioned, we'd already seen phyllic alteration around that anomaly, that mag donut. So that was suggesting to us that this is more than likely going to be a porphyry system. We then completed IP, and the results we were very, very impressed with. You've got this very clear chargeability high at the centre of that mag anomaly and resistivity off to the side of it. But it indicated to us that there's probably quite a bit of sulfide down there, and that's what we wanted to drill. That is probably the most textbook. I've been doing porphyry exploration. I worked for Chile. They sent me to work for Rio Tinto. They sent me to Chile in 2004. I spent a couple of years there before having a global role in porphyry copper exploration. And in 30 years of doing this, I can tell you I've never seen a more textbook porphyry target than what we had there. So we were pretty confident that we're a good chance of making a discovery. And on that front, we've been drilling there for 2 weeks. We're not in a position to talk about what we have at the moment. We've got a little bit of commercial work to do on a few things outside of the property, and we're waiting for those assays. But what I can tell you is that what we saw was exciting enough to rush the assays. First box of core was cut very quickly and sitting in the lab now, and expect some news on that in the next week or two. But I think people are going to be impressed with what they see there. I know we are, and the team is at the moment. Then over to Woodjam, the Woodjam Project. Look, this is our mainstay, our flagship, if you like. Has a large resource base that's already drilled out, 1.7 billion pounds of copper and nearly 1 million ounces of gold there. It's a massive property. The property's contiguous with the Mount Polley mine lease. Mount Polley really only sits 10 kilometres north of the property. We know that we're in a porphyry cluster here. The thing that intrigued me most is that previous explorers, this has had 30 years of limited exploration, but of the 6 or 7 targets that Bill Morton and his excellent crew of geologists there at Woodjam Copper, of those 6 or 7 targets they tested, 5 were immediate discoveries. The first target we went and tested ourselves that we came up with, the Megaton anomaly there, immediately resulted in the discovery of a new porphyry system. We haven't found the centre of that system. We need to do more drilling. We've only drilled 2 holes there 2 years ago before parking that and focusing on these higher grade zones. But it's now time to go back to that. And I know that there's a discovery there We just need to find the centre of it and see what the tonnes and grade are. So that's exciting. But suffice to say that the value of the company is really underpinned by the resource base that we already had. This project's had in today's dollars, over 60 million spent on it. Goldfields, back up to 2013 when everyone cut global exploration budgets. Goldfields had this as their number 2 exploration project globally, and they spent a lot of that $60 million drilling out the southeast deposit and Megabuck and Deerhorn, which give you the higher grade zones in this deposit. Again, outstanding location, really just off that highway, a little bit away, 40 kilometres to the east of the regional centre of Williams Lake. Grid power and bitumen roads through the property and then across the property. And again, lightly grazed, heavily logged, undulating terrain that you can operate year-round in. So it's an outstanding location, and importantly, it's in the nation of the Williams Lake Band, and they're very, very supportive of mining and very commercial. I'd liken them to the Taltan, who I see as being the most commercial First Nations group in Canada today. Again, just highlighting the fact that it's undulating terrain and fairly heavily logged, Taylor. So a great place to operate. This is the Megaton zone. So this is where we clip the edge of certainly it's the edge of a porphyry system. We haven't found it and we haven't gone back to it yet, but that's what we'd like to do this season. However, I would say that what we're seeing at Poplar South means that we're probably going to do quite a bit more drilling at Poplar South, and we may rob some of the meters that we would otherwise do here at Megaton and move those holes up to Poplar so that we can keep drilling there with the budget we have at the moment. 110 metres at 0.2% copper, 24 metres at 0.18. Nothing to write home about, you'd think, but what it clearly did, and those rocks are, clearly porphyry system, and we've spent a bit of time doing IP and working out where the centre of that anomaly might be. And we think, the bulk of the resource there at Woodjam sits in this southeast deposit, which is about 1 kilometre along this major fault to the south of the Megaton discovery. We very much need to get back in and test this target further and try and find the centre of it, because we suspect there could be another southeast deposit there under very, very shallow cover. So that could be an exciting discovery. And then lastly, the last target I'm going to talk about today, and this, as I say, that Poplar Thira target is the most textbook porphyry copper target I've seen in 30 years of doing this. Almost certainly a porphyry system, and I think we'll be announcing to the market that it is a porphyry discovery in the not too distant future. Copperview is arguably a better target because you're in this part of the terrain next door to Kodiak's Gate Zone, just south of New Afton and some of those higher grade mines in Kamloops. New Afton's, I think the average grade there over time has been 1.4% copper. So we're nowhere in a terrain that delivers higher grade discoveries. And that was emphasised back a few years ago when Kodiak discovered their Gate Zone. 534 metres at 0.5% copper and 0.3 grams per tonne gold from 200 metres. That was an eye-opening discovery that they made there. And that Gate Zone area is only 5 kilometres to the south of our Copperview property. In fact, the way, and this was a little bit serendipitous, the way this came to us. Steve Blower was out there hunting about 18 months ago, and he was hunting on the Copperview property itself, and noticed some copper staining on some rocks as he walked through the bush, which piqued his interest. He looked at where he was and discovered we were only 5 kilometres south of John Robbins and Kodiak Copper's Gate Zone. We inquired as to who owned the property, and to our shock and amazement, the owner of the property had been told by Kodiak that due to budgetary pressures, they couldn't justify by acquiring the project. So we did a very cheap deal to get into the property. And what that gave us, I think, is pretty impressive. So if you look at this, Kodiak's Gate Zone property, there's a number of porphyry discoveries and epithermal systems discovered on the property, including West Addit. Golden is just off their property. and their most prominent being that gate zone where they had that beautiful 530 metre hit at about 0.8% copper equivalent. We noticed from the regional mag, there's a very prominent mag lineament, a structure that runs north-south through our property, and all of the mineralisation that's been discovered to date sits in embayments, mag lows, off to the west of that major north-south trending structure. We then we completed some mag on our own property, having acquired all the regional data, and what we found really opened our eyes. That main north-south, probably the structure that's associated with the emplacement of these porphyry apophyses, continues on into our ground, and then you have these very prominent mag breaks in that lineament, and you can see one there. You can see one up here further to the north. The most prominent one, we completed some IP lines over, and we were very impressed with what we saw. And this summarises that. We've done soil geochem over here as well, and that lights up a very prominent copper anomaly at the centre of this contiguous with this chargeability high where we completed IP. You can see the IP lines were completed across there. This is a very prominent, very prominent chargeability high in the upper end of the range, and indeed it's more prominent than the chargeability high associated with Kodiak's gate zone discovery. So that enthused us, that thrilled us. We're very impressed. So we've been waiting, we've been a little bit slow to get permits. The government mucked us around briefly on that front, but they've upped their game now. And I think that we'll have permits in the coming months, and we'll be in a good position to get out there and drill this September. And based on what I've seen, this is a better than even chance of a discovery as well. And hopefully at those sorts of grades that you saw come out of Kodiak in recent times. So I'm excited about that one. And I think, we are a very good chance of reporting to the market come the fall that we have two significant discoveries on our books, which is, incredibly rare for a junior. And of course, we have that large resource base that backs or underpins the value of the company. So it's an exciting time. As I mentioned at Poplar, we started a 2,000 metre drill campaign. We're going to take some of those metres that we were planning to drill at Woodjam, particularly on the Megaton target there, because what we've seen at Poplar demands more drilling. So we're going to rob from the Woodjam project and put more metres and keep the rig turning up there at Poplar as we go now, and then come back to Copperview. I would imagine that, based on what we're seeing at the moment, I think we might continue this campaign and end up doing quite a bit more exploration work than we'd otherwise planned thus far. The capital table, there's one criticism for the company. I'll give this warts and all, is that, we've had to raise money, issue stock to the companies we've acquired, and hence our share price has come off as those long-suffering shareholders are sold into the market that we've created for them and the volume that we created for them. So again, that was a painful process. And the other issue is that, we've done share issuances, financings at decreasing share prices, because we've stuck to our strategy of continuing to drill and test targets. We don't make apologies for that, in the sense that, it's a cyclical and capital-intensive business, and the only way to avoid dilution through the exploration and discovery phase for a company like this is to continue writing checks. And thankfully, my partners and I have been in a position to continue to strongly back financings. And so, you've seen dilution during a very lean time in the market when it's been hard to get your share price moving and raise money in a more cost-effective way. But we've, offered those financings to all shareholders should they want them, and I can tell you, a lot of people have supported that. So that gives us, at the moment, 337 million shares, 533 fully diluted. A lot of our warrants and options are deeply out of the money. They sit in that 20 to 30 cent range, and I suspect we won't see those come in over time, unless the market really picks up. So a lot of those warrants and options will expire out of the money. But, at some point, we may do something on the corporate front, but at the moment we don't have any intention of doing a rollback or anything like that. We're largely a retail story at the moment, but you look at my other companies, I suppose Skeena was the first, Next Gen, ISO Energy, Skeena, and then Vizsla Silver. We've all started off as retail stories and moved on and brought on institutional investors as the stories gathered steam, and that's what we'll do here as we get going as well. So Taylor, look, that's really it. There's a bit of a summary there of all of our Inventor Capital companies. Vizsla Silver, Vizsla Royalty, of course, we spun out of Vizsla Silver. COSA, our exploration company led by Keith Bodnarchuk. Corcel Exploration, an earlier stage copper explorer that we've got down in Mexico. And of course, the other part of the stable is that led by our partner Charles Funk at Heliostar, and Charles's company is, of course, Heliostar's a producer now and doing very, very well. And so in a nutshell, why do I write checks for this company and why would I do it now and continue to? It's because you're buying in a market that's artificially depressed. Everything else has taken off, so you know that we're starting to see a trend up in valuations and money return to the space. We have a large resource base that will always have value, and indeed we do have a few of the majors looking at Woodjam as we speak, and we've got leverage to a market that is eagerly awaiting discovery, and so the upside potential here from the exploration, this outstanding exploration ground we've got, I think is fantastic. Thank you.
Perfect. Thanks a lot, Craig. Great presentation. So now we'll turn to the Q&A portion of the webinar. Just a reminder to everybody on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box. So we do have a few that have come in already, so we'll dive into these first here. First question, have you now acquired all the land you would like to own in BC, or will you still be opportunistic if the right thing comes along?
Yeah, outstanding question. I don't think we're ever fully satisfied, and certainly there's ground around. We've done a heck of a lot of deals. I think we've done over 20 deals. We've done the major deals to acquire those properties, but we've done over 20 deals to acquire pieces of ground around them. So we continue to work judiciously on those. I know there's some ground around Poplar that we'd like to acquire a stake as well, so we'll continue to do that. And very judiciously, we continue to look at bigger M&A type opportunities. I suppose having Simon Smirlek on board now, one of probably the world's most prolific mine builder alive today, that allows us to fill a niche in the market that not many people want to do, and that is by advanced stage exploration or projects that are at the earliest stages of study, buy them cheaply and move them through the Lassonde curve on into development production. And so we'll continue to look at those sorts of opportunities as well.
Perfect. Okay. Next question here. Do you think naked short selling has impacted your share price in the past?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think if you go back a couple of years, I'd say so. And we've seen that come from a few parties. I think short selling generally, whether it's naked or not, has probably had an impact. But I don't think significantly, honestly. I think the real issue for us and the reason we sold off, apart from the market just being in a terrible state, particularly for juniors and copper explorcos, it's really the fact that we did all share-based deals with Consolidated Woodjam and then Universal Copper and their shareholders. Some of them could be described as being long-suffering shareholders, and they weren't really afforded the opportunity to sell their positions because those companies didn't have much volume in them going back 3 or 4 years ago. We came along, a new group with a positive reputation of bringing new eyes and volume into the market, and people took that opportunity to dump their stock into the volume we created. So that was very, very frustrating. I don't know that I ever do that type of deal ever again, Taylor. But what I would say is that we're through it now, and you can see that we did a financing back in March. A couple of my partners and I took the bulk of that financing. although we did open it up to everyone. And since that time, our share price is up significantly. I think we're, off a base of about 5 cents up to 12 or 13 cents today. We've turned the corner. I did a lot of buying on market myself over the last couple of years as well. And I suppose what we've seen is that we've really cleaned that market up. There's not much stock coming out at the moment. So I think we're in good shape. That's a very long answer for a short question. Sorry about that.
All good. Okay. Maybe just with regards to Copperview, Kodiak did put out their maiden resource next door at MPD not too long ago. Has that brought eyeballs to that project at all, or how's that outlook? And I assume there'll be learnings from that once that report's published.
Yeah, that's right. We're eagerly looking forward to that. I thought it was interesting. I'm a little bit surprised at sort of the grade they got, given that the gate zone has some really high grade components to it. Certainly, and they've performed so much better, despite the fact that we've got Poplar, we've got Woodjam, we've got that big resource base already that's quite at a significantly higher grade than Kodiak's project. Fundamentally we should be valued at much higher prices than them at the moment. But it does highlight that a discovery in this area would be pretty highly valued. But yeah, we'll look at that report as soon as it comes out. We're very interested in what they've got there.
Okay, perfect. And with the drill programs that you've got going on for this year, what's kind of the timeline on getting results from that and news flow?
Yeah, so we kicked off the drill campaign at Poplar 2 weeks ago. I think we're 3 holes down now. I'm excited by what I see. Can't say too much. We're just waiting on those assays. Plus, we're doing a few commercial things that we wanted to get done before we put those results out. But we rushed those assays. If there's any sort of... I think that we're on the verge of a very significant porphyry copper discovery. And, we'll know in a week or so once the assays are coming back.
Okay, perfect. I'll just put out another call to the audience. If there's any questions out there, to submit them. We are getting close to the top of the hour, so we will be wrapping up if there aren't any other questions.
I see another one there from Don Lee. What grade of copper equivalent would be considered economic? That's an outstanding question. It depends on so many factors. I think if you look around the world, the global mined head grade of copper mines today is about 0.5%. So that gives you an indication. If you go up the road to Gibraltar, they're mining at 0.2, 0.25. Copper Mountain to the south of us, the south of Copperview, they're mining economically at about 0.2 to 0.3% copper equivalent. Of course, their capital is a sunk cost, so they don't have that big capital nut to get over. That will always impact negatively your net present value. But I can give you a little bit of a pointer there. We've done the southeast deposit, which is where the bulk of the resource at Woodjam sits at the moment, is under about 60 metres of shallow till cover. That impacts that project negatively. But we've done some internal scoping study work on that property and that project, and that suggests to us, we haven't put out anything publicly, but we know that at about $4 to $5 copper range, things start to look very economic. 0.45% copper with shallow strip ratio in British Columbia is actually really good grade. I think that at Poplar we have the interesting situation there where both the Poplar deposit that's already been drilled out to a large extent, it's still open in a few places there along strike, and then where we've drilled at Copperview, have hit basement rocks from surface. So you're talking about very, very low strip ratio scenarios in a bulk mining scenario. I think that you can mine those down to about 0.2% economically in BC, as is demonstrated by Tech Kaminko and the guys at Copper Mountain. So that's sort of You know, 0.45, 0.5% copper is pretty darn good. Of course, you'd love to see a lot of 1% copper material, but you're economic at those levels, I think, for the right project.
Perfect. Another question here: is there mine infrastructure near any of your projects?
Yeah, all of them. We the Woodjam property, fantastic location, grid power across it, paved roads, and the Mount Polly mine's only 10 kilometres to the north of us. So it's mining country. You've got access to all those people. And, you know, at some point in time, given the grade of some of that material, you know, might be highly attractive for Imperial and to toll treat our higher grade ore through that Mount Polly mill. So that's something that we'll look at in due course as we do studies. But yeah, we're in an excellent location there. And then up at Poplar, as I say, we're on that main road between Houston and the Huckleberry mine. The Huckleberry mine's really only 25, 30 kilometres to the south of us. And that mine's on care and maintenance at the moment. They've really run out of ore. And we know that they would love to have some high-grade ore to bring that back on stream, and perhaps Poplar or Poplar South will give us that.
Perfect. Okay. Another question here. I think this one's pretty interesting. Just as how you would approach this is, would your preference be for a stake to be taken by a large mining company, or to first build an institutional shareholder base?
Yeah, my natural inclination, and if we only had one project, would be to work on building that, advancing the company, improving the share price, improving volume and scale, and bringing, you know, rotating towards an institutional shareholder base. Here we have sort of a bit of an embarrassment of riches in a way. We've got the flagship Woodjam Project. We've got this outstanding project where I think we're on the verge of a discovery at Poplar. You know, we may be drilling there for months to come. It'd be lovely to have someone come along and farm into, say, the Woodjam property, advance the deposits that exist, and also test some of these other targets. I can tell you that we've had pretty good, strong interest, particularly from a couple of majors there. And I'd love to farm some of that project out to those guys, so that we increase our chances of making a discovery without much capital input from ourselves.
Perfect. Okay. We do have just a quick follow-up here on that, the infrastructure question, just understanding, maybe clarity on, just to be clear here, would these properties be mined open pit?
Yes, very much so.
Yeah.
Yep. All the mineralisation is very close to surface. You know, the scale and geometry of the ore bodies means that they should be very low strip ratio open pit mines.
Perfect. One more here. Are there any new technologies that you might use to speed up the exploration timeline or to reduce costs?
Look, not really. Nothing that will really speed things up. We've started, you know, we've used AI for the past couple of years, particularly Verify's platform, to help crunch a lot of data very, very quickly. And that's thrown up a few surprises. There, you know, obviously the AI outputs highlighted the targets that we've come up with ourselves, but they've also, to our surprise, we were pleasantly surprised, thrown up a few other targets that we might have missed ourselves. So that's helping, you know, but not much else. Oh, look, some of the IP work we're doing, we did ZTEM over Woodjam. I think we've used that elsewhere and been impressed with it. We were a little bit disappointed on how the ZTEM results looked on Woodjam. So we've sort of gone back to just classic IP lines over things there, and that's been very effective. You know, the only thing I think that would really speed things up is, you know, novel drilling technology that allows you to do things faster, and we don't have that, unfortunately, just yet.
Perfect. Okay, we are getting close to the hour, so I think we'll wrap up there, and we've got through all the questions that have been submitted. So I would like to thank Craig from Vizsla Copper for taking the time to host the webinar today with Red Cloud Securities, and thank you to everybody on the line for tuning in with us.